A therapist, you might check in 1 to maybe at the most 3 times a week. A lawyer is going to give you a strategy for whatever it is you need. But what we do is we create strategy, safety, peace, calm, and move an individual from a place of disorder and chaos into a place of well-being. And what that looks like is depending on what the individual needs.
Kristin, so nice to have you here today, and thanks for coming on this episode of Business Innovators. I'm really looking forward to talking to you.
Thanks so much for having me, Rob.
You got it. I want to talk about what you're doing because it's super interesting, the business you created, and we'll get into it. It's interesting to me always just what you've combined to really create this unique business. But I want to ask you, growing up, were there influences in your life or potentially situations where you thought or someone kind of gave you the idea of one day that you would be this or become a successful entrepreneur?
That's such a great question. I never thought I would be an entrepreneur. And my parents gave me this amazing gift of growing up all around the world. I owe so much to my parents. And that experience of growing up in Southeast Asia really was able to illuminate the fact that so many of us are so lucky and so blessed and do not realize it, take a lot of things for granted. So that's probably the biggest thing that I took from my childhood. I just owe so much to that environment. It's an unusual and unique ecosystem.
How did that, you hear mostly about people, a lot of entrepreneurs that I interview, small towns or, not so much growing up around the world and probably moving many times. What do you think it was about that experience or those experiences that have really helped you in what you're doing today?
I think it's the pain. What I see today that I draw from my childhood is that you're right. There was a lot of moving around, and how that translates into today and our work with individuals and is that the pain of staying the same and not moving around has to often outweigh the pain of change for change to happen. We just get so attached to security and safety and patterns. And I didn't have that luxury. I was toted around the world, and that really does color the way I see things. So
Yeah, that's interesting. So how did, growing up like that, and then did you go to college? And did you go to college in the United States or was it somewhere around the globe?
yep, no, I went to college at what's called the University now of Mount St. Vincent. It's in the Bronx. It's a great little school. I was an English major, and I made the most of that. I really wasn't sure what was going to happen in terms of going to university, but I really tried to squeeze as much out of that as I could. I studied in France, I studied in London, and of course that felt like home to me to move around and be detached from security and safety and always trying new things. So I'm really grateful for that experience too.
Yeah, I would imagine, all of the moving around, not having the security, like you said, has been a great reason why you have been successful in your career and what you've done. Uh, is that a big part of it?
I think maybe that is a big part of it. And the work that we do deals with people whose lives are in chaos and disorder, and we set order and strategy to mitigate and take care of that chaos. So yeah, that is absolutely a big part of what we do, just to set structure, set order. And had I not grown up that way, I don't know if it would be this way. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I want to get into your business. As I said, it's fascinating and know many people, clients, people you've worked with, what you've done that have had tremendous success. Before I get there, I do want to ask you how you got there in terms of starting this business. And if you want, coming out of school, obviously studying English, what were you anticipating? What did you potentially want to do, and what did you end up doing?
I didn't anticipate anything. I was just excited to have a job. And when I got out of school, I worked at various ad agencies, and I worked with the company Tiffany and Company in-house in marketing, strategy, metrics, kind of dry stuff. But one, but one thing that I did right out of college, and it was actually my first job out of college, Rob, was I only took this job because it was the highest paying job I could find, which wasn't it wasn't that much money. But I'm so grateful for the experience because the role was to go to conferences and be the on-site conference organizer for capital markets was my area, and specifically the area of ultra high net worth individuals and families. And what I found was two things. That role brought me all around the world again for these conferences. So it felt like home all over again. The other thing was I was sitting in rooms with people like the Walton family. And I don't want to say too many names, but just a couple like the
Sure.
Walton family, the family from Home Depot,
Yeah.
the Bronfmans, and I saw individuals, frankly, not to be a downer, but I saw some individuals, not necessarily from those families, but individuals who were very specific levers of change in those families and levers and change makers themselves. And I saw that certain people, when they weren't striving for what's better or set in old patterns, I saw a lot of people who didn't realize they were the author of their own lives. And by that time, I was familiar with Carl Jung and his theories
You.
about future authoring and the future self. But I did see the potential, Rob, of working incrementally, cultivating daily patterns of well-being, patterns of change, moving out of uncomfortability. And I saw the potential for not just families to change, but individuals to change. And that has a massive impact, not just on the family, their personal lives, but business itself. So
Yeah. What did you learn, from some of these people who you were interacting, daily, I'm sure, and just seeing different families, different leaders of families? Was it something where you saw something different, or, they're just like anyone? Uh, or were you looking for that? Did you take away things?
that's also a great question. I wasn't looking for anything. Like I said, I was just so excited to have this job. But I did see that one of the most important things that we can do is have that pause, because these were conferences, Rob, these were held remotely. So these would be at a
Yeah.
beautiful hotel, let's say at Palm, in Palm Beach or in some other wonderful part of the world. And it would give the chance for somebody to pause and sit with themselves and do something that we don't usually do, which is to ask ourselves, how am I in my own way? What are my character flaws? What are my defects? What would life be like if I were to release those, if I were to affect change? And I really did not, to answer your question, I really did not expect to be in this environment. I did not, frankly, I didn't know who a lot of these people were. It's only now, decades later, that I realized the importance of that and who these people were and how they affect our world economically. And so watching somebody sit with themselves and be willing to change their emotional future rapidly and incrementally, change their well-being, get out of their own way and cultivate more of a better sense of self, better relationships, improved relationships with both self and their business partners, their personal relationships, their main partnership, which has such a profound effect on our well-being. It was really inspiring to see, and I took that with me. So, and then the other roles that I did specifically at Tiffany, that really helped me in terms of strategy and knowing how to look at metrics, knowing how to look at those, but then doing that with individuals and seeing how those incremental changes could be those, like that word I used before, those really important levers of change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So interesting. Talking about Tiffany's and being there and, the people you were coming in contact with, also an extremely well-run organization. What was it? Was there a point that or anything that happened that made you decide to leave and move on to your next chapter?
I didn't make a decision to leave until well after I had my first child. And that was a difficult decision to make. And I wanted to stay home with my daughter if I could. But I went back to work also as soon as I could. I really missed that ability to have an impact on a group environment, which is interesting. Our business is nascent, and I know we'll get into that in a few minutes, but we work now one on one, and that's something that I didn't have at Tiffany. But yeah, to answer your question, there were just so many high performers. You can't work at an institution like Tiffany. This is prior to LVMH acquiring uh,
Yeah.
the company. And it was an incredible place to be, Tiffany in-house in New York in those days. And I would imagine, from what I gather, still today, it's sink or swim. You have to be really great at what you do. You have to rise to the occasion. So when I worked for Tiffany, I worked there in when I first started, it was 2001, and Tiffany started e-commerce, and I was given the task to make a roadmap of
Hmm.
the website, which didn't quite exist, and look at the way a customer would navigate through. And I take that into my business now. When we work with people in crisis. It's kind of a little bit similar. When somebody goes to a website, they're inspired. They're inspired about, maybe there's something I want to buy. Maybe there's something that I just want to look at to be inspired. But what we do, and I did this at Tiffany as well, is create a roadmap that's strategic, well thought out, and intentional about, this is where we're going to bring you. So whether that's a purchase, which of course is what we wanted it to be at Tiffany, but now we're doing something that I find personally and professionally so much more meaningful, which is to bring people to where they could never imagine going, which is really cool.
I want to talk about the business. And first, though, what brought you from Tiffany, taking time to raise your children? Or, I know that's such a difficult decision, especially back in those days prior to a lot of changes in corporate America. I know my wife went through the same thing, where she was excelling at a job and then had to make a decision. Do I stay home? Do I want to, should I raise my kid? Or it was almost like you had to do one or the other. But what then took you from that part of your life? What did you do that took you to what you're doing today? And then I want to get into exactly what you are doing.
Sure, Rob. So I had a personal training certification. I loved being in the gym when I wasn't with my children. I loved staying in touch with all of my corporate friends and being physical, whether it was running, cycling, doing yoga. I just loved it. And so I did have this personal training certification, and I did have people come to me in New York to do some personal training. And it was frankly very short lived. What I quickly found out was that individuals would come to me by word of mouth because they wanted to take their lives from here, physically at first, from here to here and really up level. And I found that we were sitting a lot, a lot of the time, even if we were going out on runs or walks together, we were really involved in a dialogue that incrementally, daily would bring us from here to here. And so very quickly, I realized that people were coming to me to mitigate crisis, whether it was to navigate a breakup, navigate career negotiations. And I discovered very quickly that I'd better go back to school. I'd better read as much as I possibly could in order to be the best at that I could be. And so my first couple of clients came to me, like the clients still to this day come to our business in a state of disorder, in a state of chaos. And so very quickly I learned that personal training wasn't it, and that people were really coming to me not for that physical transformation, but for a complete change of mindset that they didn't know that was possible.
Yeah, it's amazing how they're so connected, especially when you can find the right person who really like you and knowing you can kind of handle different sides of people and personalities and really get to the point of what they're striving for. So tell me now about the business, how it came about, and exactly what you do.
Sure. So, as you well know, most people have trauma, tragic situations, life situations that are tainted by great malevolence. They have not or do not have the tools to be strategic, perhaps even Machiavellian at times in order to advocate for themselves and be their best. And that's something that I definitely knew to be true. I knew it in my own life. I also knew from, those personal, very short-lived personal training days that, there's just way more to us than we think. And if you rise to the occasion with a vision and with a strategy, then you can only win, right? Then you can succeed. So it's been said that it's nihilistic to think that you're okay just as you are. Most of us know that we're not. Most of us are not okay, and you could be way better. And at some point, we have to make a decision. Do you want to just be complacent, or do you want to strive for what's better? So, and what's better takes getting out of your own way, conditioning yourself day by day toward a different set of goals. And it's uncomfortable. And I guess if you think about it, that's what you're doing. If you go to a trainer, or you go to a therapist, or sometimes you go to an attorney to implement or to begin that change, to make that change happen. Yeah, and one of the most important things you could do is to admit that you're not where you want to be.
Yeah.
And, just know that you're in your own way, that you have these character flaws and defects. I'm unable to have a relationship, or my relationships, career relationships, personal relationships are not what they could be. And I'm willing, and that's an important word, I think, willing to learn a new way of being. What could you improve? And why would you answer that question though? Like most people won't answer that question, what would I improve? And you might answer that because you don't want to suffer any more than you
Yeah,
already have.
of course.
So so to answer the second part of your question, what our business does is it meets people when they're in a state of distress. And most people who come to us have already gone to or are still working with a therapist, an attorney, talking to our friends and family who have limited access to strategic solutions, and they're not happy and they're not willing to be complacent. A lot of the people we work with are like the people who I met when I was right out of college. They are not complacent. They are leaders. They know that they're in their own way. They need help, but they don't know what that help is. And what I found in my own personal and professional life was that there was no set of tools, whether it was in a book, whether it was a therapist or other professional who was willing and able to make that change happen incrementally day by day. So a therapist, you might check in 1 to maybe at the most 3 times a week. A lawyer is going to give you a strategy for whatever it is you need. But what we do is we create strategy, safety, peace, calm, and move an individual from a place of disorder and chaos into a place of well-being And what that looks like is, depending on what the individual needs, is if somebody's not able to find a partner, we move them into dating, we move them into marriage. We have babies now. And as a
Oh.
product of the business, we get to go to weddings. But we also have things that some of our listeners would relate to, like we renegotiate equity, we help people move from one career into another career. And we also recognize that even the most successful people who have like a wonderful set of career achievements over here, these are greatly affected by
Mhm.
a lack of personal satisfaction. So that to the extent that this can be augmented, we our business is called High Gear because we put this into high gear, so this also can be in high gear. And then it's a really satisfying, incredible set of results.
What was it that got you to start this business? Or, how did it come about? Were you always thinking about this for a few years, or what was the course where you finally launched the business?
Sure. Well, this is where it gets personal because, as I said, people would come to just me and look for a set of outcomes that they could sort of visualize. But what I did was I used the tools that I learned from my father. My father had a background in military intelligence. That's part of the reason why we were growing up, I think, overseas. He was a banker as well. He is a very strategic thinker, and he taught me so much about grounding yourself in logic and reason. I also learned that at school. Some of the best classes I took at school were around ethics, logic, strategy. And when I saw that people were coming to me for that, what I did was I put together the strategy. And now, fast forward to today, we have that copywritten. It's a proprietary set of tools that only we have. So that is intellectual property that only we have. But it was personal for me because at one point I had a marriage that I really was excited about. And as soon as I was married, it rapidly devolved. Within a matter of months, I saw that it was not what I thought it was. And I had two children at that time, and I saw firsthand everything that my clients had been telling me about, that life has a way of completely collapsing in on you. And it's that state of chaos and distress. And at that point, what are you going to do about it? So I got a chance, and I'm so grateful for this. I had the opportunity, Rob, to utilize my own tools for myself, and I saw how well they worked. I also, frankly, saw how challenging it is to move through that day by day. And I'm grateful for that opportunity because I saw how necessary it is to work with, whether you call us a coach or an advisor, to work with that person every single day and have access to that person throughout the day for a period of 180 days. And we do that because, in terms of neuroscience, that's how long it takes. In terms of plasticity, that's how long it takes to affect change, that 90 days at first and that second 90 days. So that's why I do this. And I'm so grateful to have had that opportunity, even though it was terrible at the time.
It's always terrible at the time, and always, it's darkest before the dawn, right? And you had to go through that, it seems, to be able to do what you're doing now on the level you're at. Because if you didn't have that experience, I would imagine it'd be a lot harder, empathetically, just logically, how you would do this. Uh, if you didn't have that experience. Is that right?
Absolutely. And, most of us don't realize we're the author of our own lives. And even I forgot that going through the hardest times. So it's that reminder that we can author our lives, but we often need help. And this is the kind of help that I wanted to provide because there was no solution. And so we work in that white space outside of like where the therapists and the attorneys and other experts leave off. So I'm really proud of that,
Yeah,
really.
it's amazing because it's really a new category when I first heard about it, and what you were doing in the business you had built, and knew why it was successful. Obviously, um, there's more to it. It's almost what I liked about it and why I thought it was innovated, or innovating, and wanted to have you on the show is I really never saw that before. A program that really took into account really all of these different areas of your life, which are related, right? It was
Complete.
always like you said, I go to a therapist, I do my other things. I have my other people who help in different ways, attorneys, but it was never all in one. And it seems like that's a key to your business, and the 180 days of commitment that
Mhm.
really enables people to change. Is that right?
It does. It does enable people to change. And you do need a carefully thought out strategic plan to dislodge the conditioning process of the mind, which is tethered to the past or hardwired to the predictable future. And what we do is we wake up every single day, and instead of run through the same routine actions of the present, the past, and
Yeah.
probably do the same thing in the future, our patterns, we disrupt those. So it is uncomfortable, but it's absolutely necessary if you want to change. So that uncertainty, that lack of predictability of the unknown is what a lot of people are afraid of. So a lot of people, and we say no a lot when we do consultations, I'll do a consultation with a potential new client, and if the person is not willing to change, or sometimes the individual will say, most people do this too, Rob, will say, I'll start tomorrow. I'm not ready. I'll start another time. I don't have the capital or the investment to put toward this. It isn't going to work for me. Like, they'll see other people get married, other people renegotiate equity, other people start businesses, other people succeed in ways that they want and they can envision, but think it's not really for them. So we just need to know, all of us, including me, that it's just a program that's standing in your way of everything you want and the life that you desire. And it's going to take work, and it's strategic, it's logical, it's rooted in reason. It's not some airy fairy dream. And I believe it's important because life is so short. I've heard you say that on your podcast many times, and I know we know that life is short.
Yeah, it's interesting because what you're doing and what you're offering is so important and will change lives. But the one thing is, you have to have that client that is willing to do that, or to at least try and put the work in. So it's very interesting that you can tell kind of right away and know that this won't work. So you're not wasting time because that person isn't there yet, it seems like.
Hmm. A lot of people aren't there yet. That includes myself, and I went through the most
Yeah.
difficult time of my life to date. It's just that it's that willingness. That's why that's such an important word, that willingness to let go of what's unsatisfactory yet comfortable, right? And dive into the adventure of who you might be. And you have to be able to think and plan strategically. I spoke about how people come to us in an emotional state, a state of distress. A state of distress is emotional. And so to be able to have someone who's an advisor who can work with you every day, who stays in a wise mindset, a logical mindset, that is priceless. And so what we find is a lot of people are willing to say, hey, I don't know. You do. You can move me into this different state and cultivate this by doing this daily. And part of the way our business works is that it's all referral right now. It's nascent, it's a new business, it's all referral. And so if, Rob, you have a friend who worked with us for 6 months or 9 months and had this incredible result, and is now, for example, one past client, he moved from starting a tiny little business, getting absorbed into a massive multi-billion-dollar business that's privately held, not yet IPO'd, and was about to. And we helped him organize that, like I was saying before, organize his personal life and really, really make sure that that is nice and calm and together,
Yeah.
because kids had like no rules and things were a little wild at home, and really organize that, have a plan for that. And he is now the CSO of this amazing company that will IPO this year. So we're really excited about that. That's the kind of work we do. And it is that lack of personal satisfaction, professional satisfaction that drives people to seek us out. And even when they say they're not ready, sometimes they just know, like I know a lot of us do, like whether it's social media or other thought leaders have given us an impression that there's such a thing as balance, or between our intellectual, spiritual, and personal lives, but there is no such thing. There's never
Yeah.
any real balance. There's structure, there's solution, and that lies in that logic, that rational thinking. So we get people to delineate between the emotional and the wise, and be just a little willingness helps, and then we're able to outweigh that pain of change and just move into just this amazing place that we call high gear over here. That's why I named it the business. It's called High Gear.
I love the name. And I love the fact that, exactly what you're talking about, having interviewed so many entrepreneurs too, you know, the ones that seem happy, fulfilled, and also successful are the ones that kind of have all those areas kind of clicking or in sync, or everyone's always working on themselves or making changes, but the ones that aren't just, I'm just focused on work and forget about family or forget about health, forget it, eventually that doesn't work. So it seems like what you've been able to do with your business is really understand that it's multiple areas you're coming from, which then lead to someone's success. And success can mean many different things.
Absolutely. And I like that last piece that you said, especially because success can mean many different things. Each person, each one of us has a unique path to follow. And part of your purpose is to discover and fulfill your potential. And most of us know that we're not all we could be. And that's painful.
Yes.
There's a consequence and series of consequences to pay for not leveling up, not being in high gear, we don't mean to be cutesy about it, but it is very serious. And you can look around and see that in a lot of our friends and family, that people are not getting out of their own way. And there's a tragedy in that. And there are consequences to that for sure.
Yeah. And you can see them, you think they're doing so well or they're not. And, you might think they are, but you don't know really what's under the mask, or how they really are feeling. And, you might think they're doing well and not. And that's why it takes someone courageous also, and to be going through crisis, I assume, to really stick with something and go through it. And, I want to ask you before I let you go, two things. One is, how great is that feeling when you're working with someone, you work with them, and then you see them completely do a 180 in 180 days? Yes.
I can't even describe it. I really appreciate that question because I can't even describe it. There's so much meaning in seeing someone, I mean, really matriculate through and move through pain and discomfort. Sometimes it's pretty brutal, and be able to, whether it's date or renegotiate something. Most of the stories that we have that are stories of satisfaction are personal, because at the end of our lives, what we really think about are the connections we have with our friends, our family, and especially our partner. So, the fundamental question becomes, can you believe in a future that you can't see? And we love it when people can believe in that and work through that. And I can't even describe it. There are no words to articulate how immensely satisfying it is. So to be able to see someone go from having no personal life or no personal satisfaction, even if it's moving through a divorce and seeing that person have friends and family who love them and celebrate them and go where they're celebrating, to holding, a former client's baby or going to their wedding, or seeing their business IPO. It's beyond incredible. There needs to be a new word for incredible. So maybe it's the phrase high gear. I don't know.
I love the name. Totally. And I think just like you said, to get to high gear, you really have to, you know, the whole machine has to be operating. It can't just be you've got a great engine, but not other parts. And I think that's what you've shown, that's what you've learned, that's what you give your clients. And lastly, before I let you go, I do want to ask you in terms of the future. Tell me, it sounds like this might be the happiest you've been, at least in terms of career and what you're doing and helping people. And if so, how do you envision that continuing? Do you want to scale it up? Do you like how you have that customization right now? What's your plan?
Yeah. So we do have a business plan. I am really, really lucky because I have two great mentors, and they're really looking after me. One of my greatest mentors, who I meet as much as possible, is my mentor Ed Mathias. He started the Carlyle Group with his buddies back in 1986. And he does believe, and so do I, that there's an opportunity to scale. Right now, our business is, we're referred by clients. There's nothing else that exists except for this exclusive referral only one-to-one concept. There is a potential to scale and have a one-to-many concept, and I'm really excited for that. And there is a book. So the book is being written about these particular tools that are proprietary, that no one else uses. I guess that's what proprietary means. And there is the potential to do that one-to-many concept, but right now we're really making sure that one-to-one, those success stories are just coming in one right after the other, and then we'll look at the one-to-many concept. But I'm really excited about that as well. So yeah, we'll scale.
Yeah, knowing you, I'm sure you will. And I love the ideas of whether it's retreats or different events, and obviously the book, and just maybe as a starter for certain people who can read through and then understand, though, because it does seem like it's some clients might need the assistance to give a little push to work them through, and they'll feel better. But knowing you, I know it will continue to be successful. I'm sure it will continue to grow. I'm sure one day you'll probably be doing your own IPO. So I just want to thank you for coming on the show and sharing your vision and business, and all the amazing things you've done in so many areas.
Thanks so much, Rob. So excited, so happy to have been here connecting with you. And thanks for cheering us on. You're awesome.
You got it. Thanks, Kristen.
Thanks so much.